All right, we are live. I think there we go.
Let's do this.
Episode 28, right? I said that right? 28? 28. Last was 27, so I think this is 28.
We'll go with 28. Thought we were 26. Thought we were half a year just a little bit ago, and here we are.
Keeps moving forward.
You know, I have thought about jumping in and then not jumping in and just seeing how long you'll hang out there by yourself.
Oh, I'll just do the whole show. I'll introduce our guest and go forward. You should do that sometime. We'll see.
We should.
That
So
would
what
be a fun
do we decide? 28, 27?
It's episode 28, yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 28 of Books and Bourbon, the show that is usually about books. Today it won't be. This will be an interesting one. And then very little about bourbon. It just gives us some alliteration. I actually walked by a restaurant called Bones and Bourbon the other day. I want to say it was in Louisville at the airport. So
wasn't there a restaurant you recommended to me out here near Scottsdale that had something bourbon in the name? Wasn't it similar to that?
Also Bones and something. That was a very expensive.
Yeah, I remember you telling me it's expensive. I could have sworn that was the name of it, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was something Bones.
It might have just been straight up Bones and Bourbon.
Oh, interesting. Nice. Was it good?
I didn't go. I flew back in like 4 in the morning. Okay. No, it's called Book and Bourbon Southern Kitchen. It's literally our name. We're gonna have to hit them up for trademark infringement that we don't have.
We will. There's one other podcast named the same thing, I think, as well. They've only posted a few episodes though, so we beat them there finally.
Well, beautiful. Well, we don't normally talk weather. We have more interesting things to talk about, but it is warmer here in northern Indiana than it is in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm just going to rub that in while I can because it's 72 right now and it will be a high of 38 on Saturday. So Christina's in the house. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being one of our newer number one fans. So we appreciate you. And if you are watching, let us know where you're from in the comments. We've got a different guest today we'll get to in just a minute. This guest has not sold a single book ever. So I'm not sure how he passed the criteria for getting on the show. Matthew, we're going to have a little conversation later. But we'll kick things off with some Amazon updates. Again, restock limits it feels like a weather report. Restock limits continue to impact much of the U.S., the continental U.S., with severe efforts, threatenings on the, West Coast or something. But at any rate, hopefully you're finding ways to do merchant fulfilled or riding out the storm. We do project this will be through probably early January before some of this gets lightened up. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the Amazon beast. We did get an email today. It was kind of cryptic, didn't say a whole lot. It says unsellable inventory. So typically if Amazon loses it or customer returns it, gets damaged, unsellable inventory will now be reimbursed at a decreased rate because it's unsellable. Seems fair. They didn't really say how that'll get calculated. And even their link that they posted didn't say anything. But typical Amazon fashion, we emailed today and that will go into effect tomorrow. So that's where we currently stand. Otherwise, anything else on your side from Amazon, Matthew?
Yeah, so I was looking it up. Amazon made news, I think it was yesterday. They were the very first company a while back to hit $1 trillion valuation, and a few companies followed suit after that. But they officially became the first company to lose $1 trillion worth of valuation. I think at the beginning of the year, it said they were like 1.9 trillion, and now they're 900 billion, I think, is their current stock valuation. So they're the first company to lose $1 trillion worth of valuation in a single year, which is pretty crazy. I think Microsoft is a little bit higher than them right now in valuation, just according to the stock market, if I'm not mistaken. It's either Microsoft or Apple, one of the two. But that's probably not something Jeff Bezos likes to hear.
Well, he doesn't probably care, although he probably still has a lot of the shares. You know what they say? You can't lose $1 trillion unless you make $1 trillion.
It's true. He never sold it for that.
Yeah, it's just his paper profits.
It's IRS that doesn't count as a loss unless the asset's been sold, correct? So if he hasn't sold it yet, it's
well, they were trying to get it where they'd count it where it didn't.
I know. I don't know how that would work, but
meltdowns. Did you see the FTX meltdown in the crypto space?
I did. I didn't see exactly what that was all about, but I know there's some major dips in the crypto space over the last few days. Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything.
I guess the company was mismanaged. The guy that ran it, FTX, had a net worth on paper of, I believe, $14 billion. And it got wiped out like 90+% to where he's only worth $1 billion on paper now. So I saw Bitcoin. I don't do a lot of crypto. I generally stay mostly away. Although I've played a little bit with some NFTs. But I watched it go down quite a bit. Ethereum got really close to $1,000. So I picked up a little bit last night. Was happy to wake up and lunchtime today that was up 12% or something. So I may liquidate that and let it go back down. We'll see, but who knows? At any rate, this is not investment advice. Don't take that. Let's get our guest on in just a second. He's not drinking, so let's talk about what we're drinking. We already alluded to the fact that there's no books being discussed today, so let's at least get a double portion of bourbon. I've got we came out maybe 9 months ago, a year. Basil Hayden Toast. If you can focus on it. It's orange, so it fits the Scout IQ theme. Yes, Matthew copied me. There we go.
There we go. First time I think we're drinking the same thing out of all these
make it focus
episodes.
Somewhere else. I don't know. Anyway, mine's not capable. So
if
Basil Hayden Toast.
It should focus on it.
I don't know. I don't know how mine's set up. I just plug and play, and hopefully it works. Christina with the coffee money, $10. Thank you.
Yeah, Christina, thank you very much. Always coming through with the coffee money, the bourbon money. Thank you so much.
Well, we will say cheers and then get our guest on because no one's here to listen to us blab at this point. But Matthew, cheers.
Cheers.
Clink. Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Is that your first time trying it?
No, I'm a lot of the way through the bottle.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say it's good.
It's a good one. Yep, it's tasty. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's get our guest in here.
All right. Welcome, Dan.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. We were giving you some crap pre-show about your green screen behind you. So can you prove that this is a real warehouse? Can you throw something back there?
Yeah, let's see. I can toggle my camera.
Oh, there we go. All right, perfect.
So you can't fake that, or maybe you can, but be very advanced fake. So,
cool.
There we have it. Oh,
wonderful. Well,
now my camera's falling over. Sorry. I got the $20 one on Amazon, not the good high res one. So
hey, you know what? If that's what I like about entrepreneurs, you bootstrap where required, and you can always upgrade later.
Indeed.
Oh, looks good though.
Well, it looks good. The lighting's pretty good. Thanks for being here. Can you let everybody know where you're located and tell us a little bit about the warehouse space that we can sort of see?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Massachusetts. This warehouse that you see is actually my second warehouse. I have a warehouse in the North Shore of Boston. That's about 10,000 feet. And now I'm actually starting a prep center. So I'm going to be prepping and shipping products for other third-party sellers on Amazon. So I just purchased this building. It's in southern New Hampshire. It's about 16,000 feet. Just setting it up. I just closed on the property about a month ago. So we're putting pallet racking up and buying various warehouse equipment. So it's really pretty empty right now.
Yep.
But yeah, really excited about that. New Hampshire is a sales tax free state. So a lot of prep centers tend to gravitate towards those sales tax free states for arbitrage sellers. But they'll send a bunch of stuff to New Hampshire, save on the sales tax, pay me, $1 a unit approximately, and then I'll forward it on to Amazon for them. So,
yeah,
so that's what this facility is going to be. And also for my own, I do some arbitrage myself. So I'm kind of saving myself some money too by just being able to send it to a facility up here. So.
Well, the beauty is I've got like a 7-ish% sales tax in Indiana. So on a $15 item, that's $1 in tax. And if I can just pay you $1 to prep it and ship it there and never touch it, it's literally free money for me.
Exactly.
I was going to pay it anyway. And, literally the definition of arbitrage, that's a beautiful spot for you to be set up. So way to take advantage. You'd think the government will close some of those loopholes, but maybe not. It's
we'll
a lot of that stuff that's fought for.
Yep.
Cool.
I saw a listeners from Exeter, and that's funny because that's exactly where this warehouse is, the town of Exeter.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's not a super big town. I've heard of.
It's not a very big town. There's a really elite private school called Phillips Exeter Academy here. That's kind of the claim to fame of this town. Other than that, it's just a small town, southern New Hampshire. So
Love it.
Funny coincidence. Yeah.
Love it. Well, if that YouTube subscriber can find you by the end of the episode,
Yeah.
I'll break some laws. I'll mail you what's left of my Basil Hayden toast. So Dan, no providing.
There are no laws in New Hampshire, so don't worry.
Well,
You can do whatever you
Indiana's
want
a
here.
little bit strict, so we'll be cautious here.
True.
Well, Dan, congrats on the second warehouse. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what rich people say is, well, my second warehouse is, coming along pretty good, but that's a really big feat. I know one of our business partners, David, owns his warehouse, and I know that's been a really good financial decision. It's hard to swing it, hard to kind of sort down funding, and it's not a traditional asset like a personal residence. So congrats on going through the work and doing that. Hopefully that will pay off massively for you. Yeah. So tell us, how old are you?
I'm 35.
Okay, so you're right in the sweet spot. I'm 34, so you got me beat by a little. What were you doing before getting into the warehouse ownings business?
So after I graduated college, I actually was a professional online poker player for 2 years, believe it or not. That was a lot of fun until the federal government shut that all down in 2011. And I pretty much lost all my bankroll because the funds were seized, and I was eventually actually reimbursed for it, but that kind of stopped me in my tracks there. So then I got a more conventional job. I moved to New York City, became a real estate agent in Manhattan for probably 6, 7, 8 years till I was about 30. Did okay with that. Managed to save some money.
Did you do commercial and residential, or just one or the other?
Yeah, a little of both. I started with residential and then did a few small commercial deals. I had a friend who their family was a developer, so I sold a couple pieces of land and like development sites. Did a couple office space leases, but nothing major. But I did okay with it. But I kind of just got a little burnt out from it and was looking for a change. So what led me to Amazon about 4 or 5 years ago, I was literally just looking at YouTube videos, like passive income ideas, or just something to do on the side, sort of a side hustle to supplement my real estate income. Because real estate agency, the hours really vary. Sometimes you're really busy and have no time for anything. Other times you're barely working a week. So kind of wanted just something supplemental income. Came across some YouTube videos on Amazon private label, and I started just diving in, and I got about this close to actually pulling the trigger and buying some stuff from Alibaba and trying to do the whole private label thing. And I ended up right before that watching a few videos on wholesale and arbitrage, and it just sounded instantly more appealing to me and something I could try on a much smaller basis without trying to spend $20K on a product and marketing and PPC and all that. So I ended up starting with just retail arbitrage in stores, buying 5 units of this, 10 units of that, just right out of my apartment, just dipping my toes in the water, basically. Yep. And everything sold and sold faster than I thought, for a higher price than I thought. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I just caught the bug really early on and just started arbitraging more and more, just trying to find more products. Eventually, my apartment was filled up to the brim of, stacks of toys and grocery items and you name it. So it was getting kind of crazy. I couldn't even sit down on my own couch to watch TV. So
that's the same story with booksellers in terms of just overrunning your space.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you, just to jump in real quick, do you remember whose content you were watching back in the day?
It might have been Watch Me Amazon, like maybe the first video he ever put out like 4 years ago. I want to say it was him that deterred me from private label over to wholesale. And then there were just some random names I forget that I just watched someone walk through a Walmart or a Target and pull out, like $500,000 of profit. I'm like, wow. And so yeah, to me that was a way to just start Amazon on a much smaller scale without risking, a large amount of money. And I would imagine books is pretty similar. You can get, go into a thrift store and find really low buy costs, high ROI items and start with, a couple $100. So I think that is the way to start. And private label is kind of like the end goal / hard mode Amazon way to sell on Amazon. But for a while there, it was being taught as like the first thing to do. I think it's the last thing to do. So.
Yeah, physical arbitrage, everybody's always biased. We kind of joked about this at our conference in Vegas. We said that every business model is sort of like its own religion. the book people are going to tell you books are the way to go. And if you're into, wholesale, you're going to be saying that's it. And private label, everybody's got their own thing. I think what you just hit on though is it depends on where you are. If you don't have a lot of money and you're not sure if it's going to work, then some sort of physical arbitrage is probably the best way. You're going to get the best margins, whether it's buying clearance items, whether it's buying books. I think some sort of physical product arbitrage is a very reasonable way to get started and see if it's for you. Once you get past that, or if you do have a lot of money or a warehouse or some other advantage, then it becomes something where you can figure out how else to pour gas on it. The challenge of retail arbitrage is, unless you're going to build a scout team or a sourcing team, it's going to be difficult to scale. So you got to either leverage relationships. I run a consignment business now, so I'm not physically in different libraries and thrift stores scanning every day, but they're using our software to scan and send us the books that we want. So that's a way that we can scale without my time being required. You've scaled by setting up warehouses, and we'll get to it. I'm really curious why the decision to do prep, and then how you came about that, and how you decided to execute on it. So
cool.
So you did some retail arbitrage, overran your apartment, and then where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so from there I just went to 1,000 square foot space. I was making, I don't know, 5 to 10K net a month. Paid about $1,500 a month for a small space. New Jersey is more expensive than the Midwest for sure. Yeah, just took the leap, went into a space, and actually shared half of it with another Amazon seller. So I was really just in 500 square foot little block of space with another seller. And yeah, I outgrew that within about a year. And then there's another space in my building that was 2,000 feet. Took that one, outgrew that in another year, and then moved my whole business and life from New Jersey up to Massachusetts, where I'm from. And then leased 5,000 and then 10,000. And now I've got like 26,000. So it's crazy how fast you can outgrow these spaces. And I remember every single time upgrading the amount of space, being really nervous about it, because I really get a gross feeling when I incur a lot more overhead, just feels like kind of a burden. But every time I've been like just shocked at how fast the growth has been. So
I think that's a common theme as well. Everybody that does warehouse space says get more than you think you need.
Exactly. Yep.
It's a lot of effort. And unless you're able to find a landlord, or in your case, you're buying, but unless you're able to find a landlord that allows you to kind of end the lease and upgrade or get more space, it's, Matthew and I ran into it. We had a commercial space for our office, and we had a 3-year lease on it. And, we moved out due to COVID, and we got left a little bit holding the bag and had to negotiate out and pull some strings to, avoid paying an extra year and a half that we hadn't used yet.
Right. Yep.
So cool. So what is you got an Instagram handle? I think, Matthew, how did you track down Dan? Is that how?
1,000 ASINs. I've been following you for a little while, just seeing your journey. I like that you've just, at least from what I don't watch the stories all the time, but I just see every few months you'll post that update screenshot of your business growing. And then I saw you were buying the warehouse and other things like that. I think I got turned on to you a while ago from actually Avery. I think Avery was talking about you one time when we were together, or just him following your story. So I got turned on through that. I've been following you, for a while. So 1,000 ASINs is your Instagram handle, right?
Yeah.
What was that inspired from? Was that your goal, is to have 1,000 ASINs that you were wholesaling, or?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it was just, I wanted an Amazon related screen name. It's a little bit esoteric. Like most beginners probably don't know what the heck it is, but it's too late to change it now, I think. So, yeah, that was kind of my goal. Like I was just thinking, as I was adding more and more profitable ASINs, books are a little different because they're not necessarily replenishable, but wholesale, it's like, you can buy the same thing month after month. And I'm like, holy crap, this one ASIN is netting me $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year. I'm like, wow, let me add another one. That's another $3,000 a year, another one, $3,000 a year. And I was like, if I have 1,000 of these going, if I can just figure out how to stock 1,000 SKUs or ASINs regularly that net, $100, $200, $300 a month, nothing, not necessarily home runs. That's like a 7-figure a year net income. So I was like, wow, all right, let me try and get to that number. So then
I like how you were
like that. So
Yeah, how you approach the stacking mentality, where you do something once, you start it, you figure out if you can, make it sustainable, and then you say, all right, we got this running. Let's just, put it in the, the ice chest and let it keep going, and then add the next one to it. So I love that. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's what I love about the Amazon system. That you can just scale pretty much infinitely within it. The only limitations are really just the capital, the manpower, and the processes, and things sell themselves if if you can source right. So
Yeah.
so that's always exciting to me. That's why I think there's so much energy around the Amazon space. It's it's just unlimited potential. Whereas you work for a big company, it's like you excel for 3 years in a company and you might get a promotion and it's like, oh, here's an extra 20, 30 grand a year or whatever. And it's like, compared to adding a few more SKUs to your business and netting 20K that way, you know, the, the trade-off is just, no brainer. So
It is, and hearing you think that way, you think at a margin where you're going, if I can add more value, I can capture more of that for myself, for my team, for whatever it is for you. And I used to think everybody thought that way, and the reality is, so few people are entrepreneurs and
yeah,
understand risk and are comfortable stepping out, taking that. So
for sure.
kudos to you. I think that's one thing that makes work very rewarding. Is if you're going to work harder, then you're going to be you're incentivized to do it. And you get to sort of pick that. So what are you building towards? Where does Dan in 5 years? Where does 40-year-old Dan want to see himself?
I'd like to get my wholesale business to the point where it runs itself. I'm trying to actively remove myself from that business. Actually, I spend
Okay.
probably like 10 to 20 hours on it. My current business, my wholesale business, it's going to do about 11 million of revenue this year. And I would be okay if it just the growth kind of slows and it just becomes like a cash machine for me. Honestly,
Mhm.
I would love like hyper growth, but it gets harder and harder as you get bigger and bigger to do that. So my goal might be 15 next year, but I'm going to hire, another buyer, maybe a general manager, and just like trying to offload every single thing I do and just be like, call me if there's a crisis. Otherwise, like, you guys just do your thing.
Yeah. So how big is your team right now?
I have 6 full-time warehouse staff that are just doing, the prepping, shipping, stuff like that. I have one buyer, one VA who does some admin stuff and assists my buyer, and then I fill in the gaps basically with like the higher level stuff, more of like the bookkeeping, accounting, paying off all my bills and credit cards, and doing some buying as well. Just I don't know, account health stuff, just like the fires. But yeah, I'm realizing I could even remove myself from all that stuff. So with another 1 to 2 people. So
That's awesome. What's your spend each month right now? I imagine you're getting some pretty good credit card rewards.
oh yeah, it's insane. Probably anywhere from like 500K to 800K a month, something like that. And
Okay, so you're doing a little over $1 million in sales a month right now,
yeah.
and spending 500 to 800K. Obviously, you're not selling everything. With books, the turn rate's much lower. If you buy
Yeah.
1,000 items, what do you expect to sell out in the next 30 days, or do you expect to sell most of them?
It really varies. Some SKUs, like I try to stock about 2 months of stock every time. So, I'll expect to sell through in 60 days. A lot of times things will go wrong though, and it'll take longer. Or sometimes with wholesale, you have to go really deep on an item to hit a price tier to get your profit. So sometimes you have to go like 6 months deep and then feed stock in from your warehouse like 1 month at a time. Otherwise it just doesn't work.
Sure.
So yeah, I think, yeah, it runs the gamut from like lightning fast to like I bought a year of stock and it's sitting there for a while. So yeah, so like what I'm spending, my sales are low relative to my spend, but my inventory valuation keeps climbing up and up. So like, yeah, not all that converts to sales immediately.
So one of the hard parts is, in a given month, you might spend 800K and sell $1 million, and after Amazon fees, you got a net negative cash flow month. What metrics are you tracking? You seem data driven. What metrics are you tracking at an overall level to kind of gauge the health of your business?
Well, yeah, I look at my accounting for sure. Look at my margin. I use Inventory Lab for mostly for accounting purposes. And I can click into individual sales or filter by SKU and just see is it profitable or not? Most of the time it is. Like my gross margin is close to 20% actually, and my net margin is probably 13 to 15%.
That's phenomenal.
So like Inventory Lab will get like the top level, just Amazon related margin, and then I look at my actual QuickBooks for like looking at all my overhead and stuff. I wish I had more advanced metrics. I'm starting to look at ROI on my like entire inventory valuation, because little tweaks to that could probably make a massive difference in my profitability. Actually, I'm getting to the like I used to kind of just haphazardly buy anything that would make money. It's like, oh, this is profitable, let me buy it, without regard to how much capital I have to spend, and like prioritizing higher ROI over lower ROI. I kind of just, and still do to an extent, go a little haphazard. So, so for listeners, yeah, you can see that even a 8-figure year business, you know, you don't have to be perfect and have all these advanced metrics. Like I just buy stuff that'll make money, and I try to make the right buys in the right order, but often I've been caught with, you know, too much stock a bunch of times. So I would like to hire some sort of like financial professional to give me metrics I can look at. Because one thing that dawned on me recently, like 2 or 3 months ago, I've got like 2 or 3 million of inventory valuation, and my net income is only like ranges from like 4 to 6% ROI a month on that. And then I was looking at the individual buys I'm making, they're like 20 to 100% ROI. So I'm like, how am I getting such a worse ROI? So it's stuff like that. Like, can I buy less at a time, like 3 weeks of stock instead of 2 months of stock? Stuff like that. Just being smarter with like my inventory turns, and maybe ordering more frequently versus ordering deeper, less frequently, stuff like that. So that's kind of the next level I'm looking at, past just like how much money did I make and at what margin. So that makes sense.
Well, there's growing the business, pouring gas on it, ramping up is really important. Here's a fun sidetrack question. Which is better, or are they the same? And Matthew, I'll open it up to you as well. You know, you've heard the phrase, a penny saved is a penny earned. Is that true?
Yeah, that resonates with me because, I feel like the money's made on the buying side of things. Mm-hmm. Any little tiny edge you can get to like get your buy costs down usually translates to a competitive advantage over other sellers. So yeah, I believe that, and then also it translates to higher ROI. You know, the lower your buy cost is, the higher ROI that is. So
you'd rather save the penny than try and earn the next penny.
Yeah, I don't know, because on the other hand, you know, like all these big tech companies I see, they're struggling now, but like the model is like, don't make money, lose money, invest everything you possibly can, raise massive amounts of capital to get a massive user base, and then pull it back and monetize that. So I understand the other side of that coin too. But I think in a retail business that's so capital intensive, you should never be taking a loss ever. Like pharma packs, for instance, like they lost $60 million last year. Like, I don't know what people were thinking there. Like how that was ever possibly a good idea, if it was at all avoidable. I get it if you're trying to like develop a proprietary software or something, or have like, you know, some end goal. But if you're just buying and selling at a loss at a huge scale, like what are you doing?
Well, we always joke you can make it up in volume. Another really good phrase is you can't go broke making a profit. And I believe that. You already alluded to the other aphorism or whatever it's called. The idea of you make money when you buy, not when you sell. Your decisions are going to be better off choosing the right things to buy versus how to sell them, because to some extent the market's just going to do what the market does. Matthew, you want to weigh in on that? I've actually been pondering this one a bit lately.
Yeah, I think context matters to that question, because a lot of times you hear that penny saved is a penny earned. I think for the average person, not looking at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, yeah, that's probably true, because what they're spending the penny on is likely not an asset that's going to be returning them any form of income. So for most people, I think that's probably true. Saving the money you're earning is one of the best ways you can invest and actually have the money to use things with.
Well, so the phrase itself indicates that they're the same. A penny saved is math equals a penny saved equals a penny earned. So they're the same. And when we talk about net income, you can either raise gross revenue, and that should trickle back down to, you know, net income, or you can squeeze your expenses. You can lower your expenses, and that also should, increase net income. So go ahead. That's kind of the context.
Yeah, that's the context. But I'm saying for most people, when they're thinking penny saved, penny earned, they're thinking if I don't buy this, then I have that left in my bank account, which is true for them. From a business standpoint, I think it's kind of like Dan was saying, it depends on what you're doing with that penny. If you're actually investing it into something in order to grow it, I don't think over leveraging is necessarily the smartest thing, like you were talking about with pharma packs and stuff like that. But if you're investing it wisely, then sure, it's better to invest that penny than to try and save it and squeeze those expenses down, because that's how you're able to expand and grow. But if it's just a matter of the average person spending it or not, then yeah, I think a penny saved is a penny earned, if you're not talking about it in that specific context.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a different frame at you. I agree with Dan. I think if you can make the correct purchasing decisions, drive your purchasing costs, raise your ROI, I think that's going to pay dividends. That allows you to compete differently, because if your buy cost is lower than your competitors, you can sell it for cheaper than them, and ultimately that means you'll sell more of it. I think about it in terms of tax. So I'd rather save a penny than earn it, because if you're going to earn a penny, you have to pay your tax on it. And most people, that's going to be 25 to 40% of that penny disappears. So if I'm going to earn another penny, then I'm only going to capture, 0.8 to 0.6 of that penny. And the rest of it goes to the government, unless I can figure out how to write it off. So I'd rather save pennies, because most of that goes back to the bottom line, versus I have to, make a penny and a half in order to get a penny back to the bottom line if I'm going to earn it. Now, I also like the Ramit Sethi rule of thumb. He wrote the I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And, he talks about, we see all these people that become billionaires, and we joke, well, Elon, in order to get where he is, all he did is stop, spending $4 a day on lattes at Starbucks. You can only save so much. Most of them are going to be better suited trying to scale up. Dan's already there. He's already doing $1 million a month. Granted, who's the guys that came to the Miami event, Matthew?
Amazon Lit.
So they're doing like over $1 million a week. It's impressive. They might be doing 5 to 6 million a month.
I know it's like 60 million plus a year they're doing right now, whatever that.
Maybe 5 million a month. Of course, Q4 is off the chart, so I don't know what their typical months are. But you can always scale up. The question is, can you do it profitably? So Dan, I like the fact that you're looking at your numbers. If you are turning a profit, like that's how we run our business. That's how we run our software business, Scout IQ. We always try and be profitable. We always try and bring in more than we spend. Software has gotten out of control over the last 10 years. We saw it in the dot-com bust. We've seen it with private equity valuations. Software doesn't have to make money. They just have to prove that there's scale. And then typically that's all they need. I don't love that as a business model. I prefer to see things that actually make profit, because you can spend profit. You can't spend theoretical profit. So anyway, that's a little bit of a side piece. Dan, let's get back to, so ideally you want to try and figure out how to phase yourself out of the business, try and maintain the profitability, be smart with your dollars. When you started, just one more question back to the initial.
Yeah, sure.
When you started, what was your war chest? How much money were you sitting on? How much did you invest in the business to get it off the ground?
I had probably 10 to 20K to start with. And I had invested in a couple of properties, so I wasn't like living month to month. I didn't have $500. So I was a little more advantaged than most, I'd say, starting out. And when people ask me that question, I usually tend to answer it on the conservative side in terms of like money you need to really make this happen. I usually say like 5K plus, but I know there are a lot of people that say $200, and just depends on what your goals are. I think books is actually something you could start at a much lower rate. You could buy $201 books and net a few grand probably out of that, because I've seen some astronomical ROIs and stuff. So if you're starting with books, I'd say that number's a lot lower. But if you're trying to do wholesale, like 5K is even low. I'd say like the way things are now, like you have to have deep pockets to even get the price tiers you need to profitably resell on Amazon. I think wholesale is kind of consolidating a little. There's still plenty of opportunity, but there's, a few hundred or a few thousand mega wholesale sellers that are always hitting the top price tiers. Like you just can't even compete with that without, putting in a 100K PO for like 3 SKUs, So just to get real with people,
Yeah.
But like our retail arbitrage or books, I'd say you start with a very low bankroll. And then the other thing is like software, $40 a month, Seller Central. I use Keepa. It's another $20 a month. Accounting software, repricing software. You're looking at like a probably $200 monthly nut. So if you're going to pay $2,400 a year, like starting with it just in software, it's like, how are you going to start with 1,000 or less? I know you can bootstrap, do things manually. I know I'll admit myself, I'm on the conservative side of that spectrum. I'd say anyone with a dream and a dollar could do it. But if you want to do it, the easy way, or like, the proper way, set up an LLC, get the right software, a few grand at least. So.
Yeah. And again, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge startup cost in order to get started.
Right. Sure.
And a lot of people start Amazon and never make it work. There's the churn of new sellers is consistent. Amazon doesn't care. They treat us like widgets, like just, we're just variables, and they'll have 1,000 of us start any given day. And if 200 of us make it, 6 months down the road, great. They just want cheap products. They want a wide accessibility list of every product. That's why it's the everything store. And they frankly don't care too much how they get there. And if they have to, burn through a few sellers to do it, so be it. We're just their fodder, so to speak. Let's shift gears a little bit. Matthew, do you have any other questions there on the startup piece and some of that early trajectory?
This has nothing to do with the startup piece, but I was curious, how did you get into that professional poker playing for those 2 years? That's something you'd focused on in just high school and knew you were good at, or what kind of brought you to do that?
So I was just played casually in high school like everyone else. But college, there's this guy I met who was one of the top online poker players in the world, and he had won like $6 million just in college. Ended up buying a big house right in the middle of the college town. It was pretty cool. And he was an inspiration to me. I didn't even know you could do something like that, like make a lot of money playing poker online. I had no idea. So he was a big inspiration, and he made this website, like instructional poker website called Card Runners. And he just put out videos on like how to analyze the statistics of poker hands and stuff. And I just got kind of enthralled with it. And I was on scholarship in college, and worked like a $8 an hour terrible job. And I was like, I want to get out of this as fast as possible. And so I just spent hours a day playing poker. And then by my senior year, I was actually making like 20 to 30 bucks an hour, nothing insane, but I actually quit my job as a bellman at the hotel and played poker, and kept getting better to the point where I was actually making decent money for a couple of years there playing online. So that was it. It was just one person I met at school that happened to be really successful at it, and that was the inspiration. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think first of all, it shows you've got that like kind of data analytical mindset that I'm sure has helped out with business a lot. But it's the same story here in business, where someone's watching this right now, they hear that you've got an $11 million a year business, and they didn't even know that existed before this. And that right there just can give them hope that there's something to work towards.
Absolutely.
There.
And so even more hope, I didn't even know this existed 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this behind me even existed 5 years ago. So I can show you how fast things can change for anyone listening that's curious, it's an awesome industry. So.
Well, that's we talk about a little bit of our audience. It's a lot of beginners, people that are still tire kickers, some people that are in the game already. So if you are on the fence, just get started. I say that all the time, is just get started. It could be books. You could jump in, use Scout IQ, shameless plug, do that, but just get started. Start with stuff around your house, sell it on eBay, sell it on Amazon. You can hear us talk about it. You can see these massive numbers and you can go, yeah, that's cool. It works for Dan. It works for Caleb. It works for Matthew. But until you actually do it and see that first sale go through and have that aha moment of, holy crap, this works, it won't mean anything. So get off your butt, try it. Worst case, you're going to sit there and watch Netflix anyway. You might as well try and make a few dollars. So try something. You're going to make mistakes. I did an interview today, actually, and they said, what kind of mistakes did you make learning out? And, was that like, gut wrenching? I'm like, well, of course everybody makes mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not living, you're not trying. Like, you're going to, and that's okay. That's part of it. So yeah, I love the poker side. I've I'm drawn to poker. I love the statistics of it. I've never put the research in to get even close to that, but kudos to you for rising above the others. And just like Amazon can change the game, we're in their sandbox. It looks like that happened with, you said the federal government shut down online poker.
Yeah, they shut down the poker sites. The players inadvertently had their funds seized because they froze all the bank accounts of the poker sites like PokerStars and Full Tilt, and those bank accounts had the player funds in them while the investigation was ongoing. And it took years, so like everyone had their funds locked up. It wasn't the intention of the government. It was more to just shut down the sites which were operating illegally, but the players got some of that fallout basically.
Sure. Did you? Because that moved overseas, right? Did you end up doing that, or you just took that as writing on the wall and said it's time?
Yeah, that's where I pivoted to just like regular career, real estate agent, whatever. A lot of my friends who played poker, they ended up moving to Vancouver to continue playing poker out of the country. But I was kind of sick of it anyway. It's a very isolating job, just all alone in my room clicking buttons. So I was ready for change anyway. So yeah.
Cool. Well, glad you found Amazon. So talk to us a little bit. Let's shift gears. Talk through the prep center. So obviously you need your stuff prepped. You're doing it anyway. Where did you come up with the idea, and how did you decide to say, "Hey, I'm going to open a prep center, in this tax-free state," since I happen to live, close to it or in it rather?
Yeah. So the idea was, I utilized prep centers in New Hampshire for my arbitrage, sending 10,000 units a month up there, and even at a bulk discount rate, I'm like paying six to 7,000 a month for prep fees. I'm like, man, I could just open up a little place up there, less than an hour away, hire one person to just be my full-time prepper and actually save money. And I actually sold a property and did something called a 1031 exchange. It's like a tax-free exchange. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll take this equity from the property I sold and roll it into like a warehouse. And I started just looking around, and I found what I thought would be a perfect prep center, and I just dove in. Like, I still don't even know what I'm doing with this prep center, but I knew between like the fact that I could save myself a lot of money, and I have a couple other big seller friends in the area, and I could process their stuff. Like, that alone would cover all my overhead here, even buying a big building, maybe even make me a little. And thinking like the Instagram following I have, which isn't a huge one, but I could, pretty easily make a post and get 50 customers probably, or 20 customers. And I've seen firsthand my warehouse processing like 2,000 units a day for my own business. So I've done it before and could replicate that here very easily. And I just figured like it's just a fairly easy way in a related business. I already kind of know what I'm doing, and I just went for it basically, because Amazon, there's so many directions you can go. Like, you're in multiple things. You're in books, but you're also in Amazon software. There's so many different niches within it. There's like wholesaling to other sellers. There's other marketplaces. There's other services. There's like 20 ideas I have, and frankly, I just want to try and do it all. So right now I'm actually frankly overwhelmed and spread very thin trying to run my business and start this new one. But I think in the end it'll work out. Just being like more vertically integrated, basically.
Yeah. So devil's advocate to that, you're talking about trying to pivot and transition yourself out of your main business, right? You've grown it to where you're going to hit 11 million bucks this year, which is awesome. Congrats on building that. Very few people get to 8 figures. That's impressive. You're talking about phasing yourself out on a business that has margin, that has profit. You already own 2 warehouses, and of course you can leverage that asset to the prep center. So devil's advocate, why bother taking on a different piece of it other than trying to improve your own margins? Is that something that, like, walk us through what goes on? You're obviously very analytical. You played poker. You understand numbers. What is driving that decision, and what are the pros and cons rattling around in your head to kind of make that decision?
Yeah, for sure. I think actually a lot of it comes down to diversification. I went through a really bad Amazon account suspension like 3 years ago, like a year or 2 into my journey, and I was suspended for 4 months, and it cost me a lot of money. And like, honestly, it gave me like a little PTSD. Like, I was like, never again. I never want my businesses to be like Amazon, to be able to just flick the light switch off on my business and now my whole life, especially with like employees and overhead and stuff. So I think the prep center in large part is like a bit of a hedge where it's like if my main account goes down, I'll at least have something as a backup to like pay all my bills and overhead and stuff. And so it's more of like a diversification thing, I guess, because you make a great point. Like, why would I leave like a burgeoning business that's profitable? Maybe it's better for me to focus on that and just bring that to the moon. But I think I just have this need inside me to like not. It's almost so good that like it almost feels fake and like it won't last forever type of thing, which is a psychological barrier that I have personally. Because deep down I believe it will, but I kind of want to just like have this backup plan where like something happens to my business, I can at least be a service provider for other Amazon sellers, you know?
Yep.
So I'd say the reasons are more psychological than anything. And like, I guess a little bit of risk management. But.
And that's worth doing. Well, risk makes sense given your poker background. I think almost anything has risk baked into it. We always think through things with risk. And if you don't, then maybe you're not thinking through things properly. So I do appreciate that. I like that. You're still in the same industry we are too with software. If Amazon, does something silly or goes out of business or something happens, all of our businesses are at risk, right? So our physical book business, any of the software businesses that we run, all of that is still in Amazon's sandbox. So it does diversify the risk. Like if our Amazon account gets shut down, at least we can still have, a software business. If our software business developer credentials go down for some reason, we still have a physical book business. Sure. But everything is still, in the same risk bucket being Amazon.
Sure.
So I do appreciate that. I think that's something worth considering. And psychologically, it's hard to put a price on that. It may be the best use of your time to keep growing what you're doing. But if you're losing sleep at night, then you do need to kind of figure out an alternate track there.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. You're going to use your your New Hampshire business for the prep center, right?
Yeah. That's going to be where all the prep is.
Okay. Cool. Well, that's fascinating. What do you see as some of your hurdles for the next 12 months? Like what are you trying to manage from a risk standpoint, from an employee standpoint? What does your business look like over the next 12 months?
Well, yeah, there's like the looming recession, which, I don't try to overanalyze every purchase I make. A lot of people do get some analysis paralysis, like, oh, well, if this happens with this market and that market, then demand for consumer electronics will go down 20%. So they overthink the crap out of it. As long as the Keepa chart shows that it's selling, like I'm just going to keep buying. But I do think everyone should be a little cognizant and a little less loosey-goosey with like what they spend on or how they just like a little more cognizant of purchasing. If retail as a sector, like the spending goes down. So far I've been unaffected. It's been fine so far, but if it does get worse, just that's on my mind. And also, I guess just figuring out how to get out of running my business. I'm still in that. I mean, you hear it all the time. It's like, don't work in your business, work on your business. And like, yeah, that does resonate with me. So I'm trying to be good at outsourcing everything to other people and truly becoming a business owner of this prep center and of my other business. And I've never built a business like this, so I frankly just don't have the skills. So, I'm not an executive that's been groomed and with 20 years of corporate expertise on how to build massive teams or anything like that. So that's my personal struggle, trying to like separate myself from the constantly getting pulled in 15 directions by every employee I have and every, that. So those are the challenges I'm facing and working on. So,
yep. Good
problems to have. Yeah.
They are great problems to have. That's for sure. As you think through, let's just do a what if thing, and we'll take some questions from the audience as well. If your Amazon business gets killed tomorrow, both the prep center and your own business, let's just say that you've got 2 warehouses. What are you doing after you lick your wounds and shed a few tears and break your drinking in the middle of the week rule? What are you doing because you have an asset now? You got some warehouses. what's your exit strategy if something?
Yeah, my backup plan, if I can never get back into Amazon, it all goes to crap. I would probably start an Airbnb empire.
There you go.
Yeah, I've done furnished rentals before. I own like 4 or 5 properties, and so I can start right there and just do lease arbitrage, or just buy some properties and try and generate a bunch of cash flow from furnished rentals. I think that's actually another excellent business.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that being done quite a bit. Where do you own rentals?
New Jersey. So I have a couple properties in New Jersey, then this warehouse, and I just have my condo. I actually Airbnb'd my condo. I live in Salem, Mass. It's very touristy in October. It's like a hub of like Halloween and witchcraft stuff. And
nice.
I just got out of Dodge and got like $1,200 a night for my place and paid my whole mortgage for the year. So I see the power of that. How much, the ridiculous prices people will pay to rent Airbnbs. So I think that's still underutilized, even though a lot of people are doing it. I think it's a fantastic way to get a bunch of cash flow. So yeah, that would be my backup.
Cool. Well, I do a little bit of Airbnb. I actually rented out my own house when I was in Colorado. That worked out really well. It paid the mortgage. It was like a minimum 4-night stay or something. And I was in like middle of suburbia, Aurora, Colorado. Okay. And people would rent it for a softball tournament for the weekend. They'd come out and stay for a week, and that would pay the mortgage for a month and a half. So it was like, all right, I'll either rent a hotel for $100 a night, rent my house for 400, or I'll just go travel somewhere and you can have my house.
Yeah. So I love sharing economy ideas in general, like Turo, like car sharing too. Just anything where like assets are shared and you can make money off the things you have in ways you couldn't ever before due to technology. Like, I don't know, that stuff's interesting to me. So
well, and you own a warehouse now, so I think owning something, the traditional path to wealth in America has been to buy as big of a house as you can at low interest rates at a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That may change now that interest rates are 7 to 8%. It's starting to change the math a little bit, and who knows what's going to happen to the housing market and to the overall economy. But traditionally, hold real estate as long as you possibly can, and good things tend to happen. And I still think that's the case. And part of the benefit of owning and running a business is you get to own something, you have an asset. And if you can focus on not just the income statement and the cash flow, but if you can understand the balance sheet and how to add assets, I think that's what separates people a little bit.
For sure.
If somebody's watching this, last question from me, then we'll open it up. We'll do our geek out segment as well. If someone's watching this that is selling books and has maybe kind of reached a plateau, they're kind of at the peak of where they want to be, and they're going, hey, I'm curious what else is out there. What would you say are the next, 2-3 steps they need to take to say, hey, I've got a little bit of money. I've got a successful book business. Maybe I'm going to keep books on the side. Maybe I'm going to move away from them. What do they need to consider? What do they need to research? What are some of those next concrete steps to say, hey, I want to pursue wholesale? What does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of the principles are the same. The cool thing is you can sell pretty much anything on Amazon. So I'm very agnostic as to what I sell, and you could be too. Just because you sell books exclusively right now doesn't mean there's no rule that says you can't sell anything else. So just realize that you can sell anything else. And I'm honestly not sure if you're using the same analytics tools as me. I'm assuming you're using Keepa to analyze like book sales, historical data. So if you do have that skill set, how to read a Keepa chart or understand sales velocity and price history, stuff like that, you can translate those skills into literally any product. So I would go out, get a scanning app, and look at the clearance section and see like, oh, I can make money on this toy as well, and just bridge the gap there and just buy anything. And then wholesale, it's a little bit different. It's more about like spending power. So I'd say if your funds are limited, try just arbitrage first. If you build up somewhat of a bankroll, I would go on wholesale websites of brands you find. Like my top method is stalking other storefronts. So I'll click into their products, look at everything they sell, and I look for these little like small to medium niche brands. I'm not trying to like go contact Apple computers and be like, can I buy wholesale? It's more like these tiny little beauty brands or grocery brands. Go on their website. There's usually a wholesale link. You can fill out a little form. hey, I'm an online retailer. I'd like to buy your products wholesale. Could you send me a price list? Or give them a call. And you'll get a price list. You'll compare the wholesale price with what you can sell on Amazon. The principles are all the same. You know, if there's ROI and profit margin and sales velocity, then you make the buy. And it's there's actually probably a lot more in common with selling books versus other things than that's not in common. You know, the skills do translate, I believe. So.
Yeah, most we call it transferable skills, translatable skills, same idea. And that's why the important thing is, if you want to get into the reselling economy, is just get started. Most of the skills you're going to learn are not going to be wasted. If you learn how to sell books, the same principles that apply, the same ideas of running a business, of managing people, of setting up systems, all that applies, just at different scales. Mm-hmm. Could be bigger, could be smaller. So just getting in the game makes a big difference. Matthew, any other questions for Dan before we switch gears slightly?
From the comments or just personally, me?
Just personally, before we kind of open it up. We will take questions. So if you're watching and do have questions for Dan or Matthew or myself, feel free to start asking those. We'll get to those in just a minute. But Matthew, anything else that came up?
This is more just, this could, something you could talk about for a while. So just more of an overview, high level view of this. But a lot of people I know I've talked to that are currently renting warehouse space and are considering what's the possibility of buying an actual warehouse space. Like, commercial real estate is pretty different than a normal residential real estate purchase. What are some things that you thought about when you went about purchasing a warehouse to know, like, I'm ready to make this investment in a warehouse? Are there certain indicators you're waiting for, or just since you had that real estate background, you knew more about it and that's what made you confident to go into it, or what kind of led that decision making?
Yeah, it was more that than anything. And I talked to a bunch of local agents, and they're just saying, like, the demand is sky high for industrial space. And it makes sense for a variety of reasons. Like, since retail is moving more and more to e-commerce, a lot of these like big warehouse spaces are more in demand. Not just for Amazon, but other retailers, like a Sephora or a Ulta Beauty, or some big box retailer. They're doing more and more business online, and they get these big distribution centers. So I just figured warehouse space will continue to increase in demand, and I just went in with the confidence of knowing how to analyze a property, and there are tax benefits to me buying this property, and is well within like affordability. The downside though is commercial is a lot of variable rate mortgages. You can't really lock in like the same rate for 25 years typically, or it'll be higher than an adjustable rate. So a lot of commercial commercial real estate owners are actually going to get hit hard by these rate increases, including myself. My payment might go up like $2, $3, $4 a month once the variable rate resets. So I would say be very, very careful if you're going to buy anything right now. I believe the real estate market hasn't adjusted yet to how high the interest rates are, and I believe it's going to tank everything, commercial and real estate, 20 to 40%, I would guess. So I'd say there's no worse time to buy a home or a piece of commercial real estate in probably 30, 40 years. So please don't do that.
So what I'm hearing is go for it, right?
Yeah. Or just go for it and put your head in the sand.
Well, if you can make it work, there is something called I don't know the actual term, but some like FHA loans are transferable. You can actually assume them; they're assumable loans. So there is some people that are locked in at 3.5%, and right now current rates are like 7.5%. If you pick up some of those houses, you can assume the mortgage at 3.5%. So if there are cases like that, by all means, go for it. But
definitely, that would actually be a great play because you buy the real estate dip, which is all predicated on these higher rates, and if you can assume that 3.5% rate, then you won right away.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. You make money when you buy. I own a number of Airbnbs in Arizona with some business partners, and we've actually stopped purchasing right now. We did purchase we bought 2 more earlier this year. We are pumping the brakes just a bit because we're not quite sure. We're seeing stuff sit on the market a little longer. We're not seeing prices come down yet, but certainly compared to buying a house at 4% interest versus 7.5% interest, your purchasing power goes way down. Because the bank doesn't really care that it's a $500,000 house. All they care about is what is the monthly payment and what is your monthly income, and can you support that payment?
Right.
So that's the game we're playing. No one really cares about the price of the house. That's just a magical, mysterious number. We just care about what is the payment. And so certainly those payments are not sustainable. I'm with you. I do think that real estate has to come down. However, I don't know that it necessarily will, but at the same time, there's just uncertainty. I don't see it going up right now. I see it, maybe being flat and likely to come down. So we're not buying more right now. We'll kind of keep our cash, our gunpowder on the side and wait for things to shake out, and then, decide to reallocate later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm by no means a financial expert, and whenever I try to predict the future, I'm usually wrong. So I take whatever I say with a grain of salt. So.
Yeah, if you want to know how to buy stocks, just listen for whatever my stock advice and do the opposite.
Right.
You'll probably make money. So
yeah, if you hear that type of stuff, that's usually a red flag. The smartest people usually say, "I don't know the most." So
yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew, let's shift gears here. Let's shift to the geek out moment. This is the segment where we talk about what we're geeking out or what we're excited about. It doesn't have to be business related. It doesn't have to be Amazon related. Just something that you're learning. Matthew, you want to kick it off?
Yeah. I guess right now, one of the things that, like, at least the last few days, and I say few days because it has not been that long. So back actually in high school, have you guys ever heard of the Vibram 5-finger shoe things? Have you guys ever seen ads for those?
Yeah.
Huh? Vibram. Yeah, the
Vibram.
Vibram. Sorry, Vibram 5-finger shoes. Way back in high school, I had those because I was a lifeguard, and it was like the easiest thing to walk around the pool deck and not slip, but not have your feet like on the pool deck all the time. So anyways, I wore those, but one of the reasons those were made is to kind of supposedly imitate what your natural foot would do when you're running.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had trouble running ever since I was really, really young. If I'd ever tried to run, I'd have really, really sharp pains in my shins within 100 yards of running. So I just never really ran. I could swim, I could ride bikes, I could do rowing, all that stuff, but running was just always off the table for me. And recently I've been trying to get into running a little more and figure out how to overcome that pain in my shins. And one thing I realized was that if I warmed up like to an extreme amount, and then ran after that, it wouldn't hurt and I wouldn't feel it the next day. But I'm talking about like really warming up, like do a squat workout with lunges and everything else right before I go running. And then suddenly the pain wouldn't be there. But I was like, there's got to be a better way than this. And so I just turned on to the book Born to Run. Have you guys heard of that before?
No, I haven't.
I have. I don't think I've read it.
So you should read it. I'm only about halfway through it right now, but it's not, even though it's somewhat of a self-help type book talking about running, it's written like a normal fiction book almost would be, because this guy's taking you through a story and he's an excellent writer. And so it really took me in real fast. But it's basically talking about how the way we run right now is very different than how we've run in the past. Right now, all our shoes have tons of cushion. They're made for you to hit with your heel and roll forward your toes. But if both of you guys took off your shoes right now and I made you run as fast as you could, you'd naturally shift and land on the front of your feet, not hit with your heels every single time, because your body's just not made for that. Your foot's meant to act as its own spring. So anyways, this book talks about this tribe in Mexico where they found these people. They weren't extremely contacted by the outside world. They kind of stayed away, but they had this extreme ability to run. And one of the things people have thought about is a long time ago is that how did people hunt food before we had like metal and be able to make weapons, is that humans can actually run further than most animals, not as fast, but further, because we can actually cool ourselves down where animals overheat after a while. So they think people a long time ago used to hunt by exhausting the animals and outrunning them over a long distance period of time. So anyways, this tribe, they discovered them, and these people would run 300 miles, 400 miles without stopping at a single time. And they've like adapted over the years in order to do this, running on basically these thin little leather sandals. So they don't have these comfortable orthotics and everything else we do now. And so he's basically talked about we've lost the innate human ability to run because we have every tool we need, but the shoes we've been wearing for the past 100 years have hindered our natural ability. And if you just take those off and do something more, or it's like a flat sole or actually running barefoot, all those knee injuries, all the shin injuries, everything will go away. And the people that have done it have, a lot of them have shown that it's actually true. People that have had problems like I have done that. So I'm trying to transition that way for a little while to see if that actually does help my pain, because I've always wanted to be able to run. And this book has just been really cool. So I know it's a really popular book. It came out a long time ago and it has like 15,000 reviews or whatever on Amazon. But for those of you listening, if you've had problems running, read this book. It's a pretty interesting read, whether you do it or not. But I've just found that fascinating the past few days reading that and just thinking like, yeah, I guess we haven't had comfortable shoes and orthotics the past 5,000 years, but people have been running forever. So there's some other way they were running than what we currently do. So that's been really interesting to me over the last few days.
Love it.
Sweet.
Dan, what do you got for us?
Let's see. Trying to think what I've geeked out on. Well, I guess along the lines of fitness, I've been doing a lot of cold plunge therapy. My gym that I go to has a cold plunge. It's like 48 degrees or so. And,
that's so cool.
Yeah, so I've been doing that consistently for the first time in my life, and it feels really, really, really good, actually. It sucks getting in, but once you're in there for like probably a minute, you kind of just go numb a little bit, and the weirdest thing happens, like your own body starts like producing its own heat. You can kind of feel like the heat rising up from your stomach. It's interesting. And then I usually end with dunking my head under, and I really do get a big endorphin rush that lasts, a couple hours after. Like I feel kind of just like blanketed in warmth for a couple hours, and then while I'm in there, it's like forced meditation. Like it brings you straight into the moment. You can't think about anything in the past or the future. Like you're just there, and it's like it's a really nice feeling of being like hyper awake and like in the present moment. So I've been geeking out on that, and yeah, I've had good results. I know it's kind of like trendy now to do this cold plunging stuff, and that's probably how I got into it. But there is something to it for sure. So
it's really cool your gym has that. Very few gyms have like cold plunge areas. I know they're probably getting more popular now, but I haven't seen that yet. I think I've heard about it once or twice, but it's really cool you're able to have that there.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
Are you doing anything else health related?
Yeah, I've been lifting a lot. I've actually taken terrible care of my body like the past 5 years, but I'm finally in a good gym routine with a couple of friends, also Amazon sellers, which is fun. Yeah, we're lifting like 4 times a week. We're about to introduce like a boxing class every Saturday, and I've gotten a lot stronger actually. I went for a max bench of 315 a couple of days ago, and I was very, very close. So
nice.
And bench about 300 now, which I never thought was possible. I was in excellent shape in high school and college, played 3 sports, very lean, and I can max maybe at like 235, 245. So I never thought,
wow,
15 years later, that I'd ever get up to this level of strength. But I guess it just goes to show you consistency. Like you can build things over time, and there's a parallel to Amazon with that too. Just like show up and do a little every day, and then you look back at the results after a while, and you're like, wow, I actually built something. So
yeah.
So I've been really enjoying that. Yeah, and it's great stress relief too. At the end of the day, I put my phone in my locker, no phone, just interpersonal time, and hit the weights and then hit the cold plunge. I feel great. So
yeah, that's remarkable. Congrats on doing that. The principle you talk about is Kaizen, like small improvement, little improvement every day. And it's crazy how much that stacks up. I think there's a book, The 1% Rule, or something along those lines,
right,
which is the idea of getting 1% better each day. We think, well, yeah, over a year, it's like, yeah, a little bit better, but we don't understand the exponential benefit of that. And especially for you as a 35-year-old, you were, 3-sport athlete, and to be able to increase your bench by, 60, 70 pounds as an older fella is remarkable.
Yeah.
I think there's something to muscle maturity and age though, because one of my friends from Colorado, he's now getting to like be mid 40s. And he just maxed out at 315 when I was with him last in Colorado. And he'd never, through high school or college or anything, hit that weight before. But he started training more consistently for strength the past year, and his strength, he said, has gone up way more than it ever did when he was in high school or college. And so I don't know, it's interesting. It's the second time I've kind of heard that or seen that story.
Yeah, and also
I was with him when he hit it, so I'm positive he hit it. So it was a real thing.
Right. Yeah, I've seen bodybuilders, like, they peak in their strength in their 30s, I think. Like, it takes, like, a decade
Yeah.
for them to, like,
Yeah,
pack
the
on that
average
muscle
Olympia
mass.
winner is like 35, 37.
Right,
Like they can't, young people can't get that size in that amount of time. So yeah,
right,
it's
right.
they're up there in age, not up there in age, but for an athlete.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
What
Well,
about you, Caleb?
I'm gonna geek out about health as well. It'd be interesting. We've been doing this for 6 months. I've actually lost 30 pounds a year. I was about 175, 180 in college, and I worked a corporate job for J&J and just started traveling and being a lot more sedentary and not eating well. And I remember tipping the scale a little bit earlier this year, like at the beginning of the year. I finally cracked 200 and was like, that's not healthy. That's not where I want to be. And I realized like the business has done well. I've got good relationships. Like there's so many things that are good in my life, but my health was not a piece of it. And so this year has been the year of health. You've heard me talk a bit about it. My geek out moments about this anyway. But one thing I found, if you're like, I've set up challenges before and always just struggled and never did it. I actually had a challenge with another Amazon seller, Michael Fordnall from Franklin Media. He spoke at our Vegas event. He wasn't in person, but we recorded his lecture, and I think he was guest number 25 or something on Books and Bourbon. But we set up a challenge where we said we each want to get to a certain weight. I wanted to get back to 180. I ended up getting down to I'll share a little bit. I got down to 173 a little bit by mistake. But he was trying to get down. I think he lost 30, 35 or 40 pounds as well. He was a little bit heavier to start with. But our challenge was kind of cool. It wasn't, I'm trying to beat you and you're trying to beat me. It was, we're doing this together. So the goal was we each set a target weight. If we hit that weight, we were going to take a reward trip, and we decided to go kayaking or rafting in the Grand Canyon, someplace I'd never been. It's something I probably wouldn't have done on my own. And the caveat was if I hit my target, but Michael didn't, neither of us got to go. So as we got closer, I don't care as much. It's like, so what? I lost, 15 pounds instead of 20. I feel like I won. And
Cool.
I'd be content, but I didn't want to let Michael down. So as we got closer, we had of course, me, I set up a spreadsheet and we had a Google sheet and a weekly weigh-in. But as we started getting closer, we started taking it seriously and realizing like, we're both really close. We can't let the other one down. And so that dual motivation helped. What I'm going to share here, I've got Whoop. Matthew, can you share that up in the screen?
Yeah.
So you guys know, maybe you don't, I have Whoop. It's really big in the golf community. It's just a heart rate tracker. Doesn't do anything else. Doesn't tell time. It's balancing strain, how much stress and effort did I put in my body with recovery. So last night I had 75% recovery. Sleep performance, I needed 9.5 hours of sleep. I don't really get that. I should probably take that more seriously. I got 77% of my sleep need, but my body recovered. And what does it mean by recovery? Well, it's heart rate variability. Higher is better. Resting heart rate, lower is better. So what's interesting is I have my last 3 months of resting heart rate just charted here, and their app is way better. I love their app. I would love to maybe steal some of those elements or borrow them for Scout IQ. But what's interesting is you can see my resting heart rate normally is around 50. And the last 6 weeks, it's actually trended higher to the point where it's actually approaching 60. And in some cases was much, much higher. So you look at trend lines, it varies based on how much sleep I get. But in general, it was running right around 50 for, 2 months. And the last 6 weeks, if you kind of average that, it's pushing 60. Well, to go from 50 to 60, a 20% increase in resting heart rate is crazy. I don't have a lot more strain in my life. There's not a lot more stress. I feel pretty good in general. And I knew something was up, but I didn't really know what to make of it. Well, I've been seeing a nutritionist. He looks at my blood. Many of you know I went to India about 6 weeks ago, which is when this started to change. And it turns out we looked at my blood, and I actually picked up parasite. So we looked at my blood. My red blood cells were all clumped together. We actually found a parasite or two in the drop of blood. And it's like, duh, the data is literally in front of me. I've been running borderline fever, not COVID related. I keep testing negative, and something was going on in my body. And it's like, well, duh, I went to India, ate a bunch of street food, hung out, had a great time, but I brought a guest back home with me. So part of the reason I ended the weight challenge, I got down to 180. I continued to lose weight after. It turns out a parasite's pretty good for losing weight, but I ended up getting down to 173. And we found this a week ago. So what's really fascinating is you zoom in on a month, and I kind of hit my peak 2 weeks ago. And over the last week, it's steadily been going back down. My sleep has improved tremendously. Wow. I'm on a couple supplements. One is it's ozone, which is not FDA approved for anything, but it overly oxygenates your blood. And, we muscle tested, we did all the foo-foo stuff. And, over the last week, we thought it would take a month to kill this thing. We'll relook at the blood in a month. But what's fascinating is I'm finally sleeping again. My recovery is back to where it should be. And my resting heart rate's coming down noticeably, back approaching to where it really should be. So I'm geeking out over health. It's just fortunate I had a schedule, booked with my not therapist, but nutritionist. So what's kind of cool is you like measure sleep, does all kinds of cool stuff. I pulled an all-nighter Friday night for reasons that still elude me. So I didn't get any sleep there. I thought that was done in college. It's not. But there it is, recovery. Over the last 6 weeks, I've had a lot of yellows and reds. And now over the last week, since, trying to take care of that, I'm back in the green, which is really where I should be. And the reds are out of the equation. So I'm fascinated by health. I think it's really fun. Whoop is not cheap. It's like $30 a month, $25 a month, but that's something really fun to look at. We should look at people's resting scan rates, see how many books they scan in an hour on autopilot. But anyway, that's what I'm geeking out about. Be careful if you're going to go to new countries. I drank some bad water in Malta and got sick afterwards. And then I picked up a parasite in India. So apparently traveling is not for the faint of heart. Be careful. But that's been something fun to check out this year. And it's fascinating. I've been caring about health and fortunately caught this thing before it progressed even worse.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Outside of that, let's take just a few questions for you, Dan. If you got maybe 5 or 6 minutes, just stick around. And Matthew, you want to pick out a few of those?
Yeah. So you partially answered this one. Someone wants to know what software are you using. You mentioned Keepa and Inventory Lab. Is there anything else you mainly use to run your business? I think you said QuickBooks too, if I remember right.
Yeah, QuickBooks. I have a repricing software, which I'd recommend to anyone above 20 SKUs or something. Just too much to manage manually. It gets to be too much pretty quickly. So get a repricer. I also have a 2D barcode software called 2D Workflow that makes shipping easier for me in my warehouse. And then I have another shipping software called Seller Chain, which actually does this magical thing where it'll consolidate shipments into one fulfillment center. Normally it will split into 3. But there's a way it manipulates the system to route to one place. So that actually saves me a lot of money on shipping. So other than that, and then RevSeller is just a profit calculator that just shows up on an Amazon page. So you get a quick and dirty view of profitability very quickly. And I think those are the main ones. Yeah. So not too many more.
Nice.
Yeah.
How often do you go in on a product on a hunch?
Very rarely. But I guess I have sometimes where I've seen a brand new listing that's only been on Amazon for a week and I see that sales velocity is picked up every day. That's something that I could probably imply will sell very fast and it's just getting started. So something like that, maybe I'll take a chance on going heavy on it and being the first one there before other people figure it out. I guess you could call that a hunch with some support, but total hunch, never, never. Yeah.
Nice. I'm going through right here and seeing.
Well, I think in the book world, you can take a hunch on one-off books. If you have a book that might make $100 and you're throwing $1 at it, I think that's fine. But in your world, if you're buying $10,000 or $100,000 of inventory, that's not the time for a hunch. You got to make sure you're accurate.
Yeah, but I saw some super cool book that just it's giving off the right vibes to you. Buy it on a hunch and see what happens.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what we've got for questions in there right now. But yeah, thank you for taking so much time. I know we've been going for a little longer than normal right now, but I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and insight with the audience.
Definitely. It's great talking to you guys. And if you guys have any follow-up questions, happy to answer them.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Dan, and good luck as you continue to chase your goals the rest of this year. Hopefully your Q4 treats you very well. Thanks for coming on the pod, and we will catch up very soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. See you guys later.
Peace.